Okay, let's get started again. I'm going to try to change my resolution. I realize that it may be difficult for you all for everyone to see it clearly, so let's see if I can make this. Let's make this really, really large. I don't think I can do 800 by 600. It's going to be painful. Okay.
Can you just change the scale, the percentage scaling on the, magnification?
With my other resolution? Or?
When you went in to change the resolution.
Keep the resolution, just change the magnification.
Yeah. So like go back to the previous resolution and change the magnification.
Change.
Yeah, there.
Just that?
Yeah.
Let's try that again. Yeah, that looks better. Good idea. Okay, let's get started back again. So the remaining Windows utilities, and once again, this is the first day. It's a little bit special. The rest of the course, it's going to be very much hands-on, but I don't know how else to tell you about all these little things that you need to know about Windows rather than just tell it to you straight. So let's see. Make sure we get the simulcast working. Okay. So, Event Viewer. Windows has a log, a centralized log, and it's a list of information. It collects about anything that happens for any program that wants to write to the common Windows log, and it's called Event Viewer. So if you do click on Windows and Event Viewer, or you can do it that way, or that is the name of the program, so we can actually run that, and it will do the same thing. So what you see here is categorized logs. It's not just one big list. What it likes to do is, let's go under Windows logs, and then you have different flavors of logs. So if you click on Application, which is most often where you're going to see things related to your own applications or things that you work with, each one of these entries, and you're going to be surprised to find that the programs on your computer are already talking to the Windows log all the time. The Event Viewer will allow you to see what they've been saying. There are several different types of, they call them levels, of log messages. Most of them are going to be informational, but let's see if we can find some that are warning or error. There's warning back up there. So user profile cert, let's see what's going on here. So most of the time Windows has little problems that it doesn't really tell you about because it's not showstoppers. But if you want to see all the full details, this is how you go look at them. So it looks like load for some components named by this failed, and error code is a required privilege is not held by the client. So that sounds like something tried to do something and it didn't have permission to do so. So it logged it. Now, you all probably just went through installing a whole bunch of stuff. So that will be under Setup or System. Probably System. This is where you get Windows Update stuff. You also get, and I didn't install anything recently here, but anything that usually has to do with changing the system configuration will be logged here. And you can see a bunch of little errors. Now, if your computer's still running fine, don't be concerned about little errors in here. This is, you're peeking behind the curtain, you're seeing all the gory details about how does Windows run. If you double click, it will show you, okay, Here are the full details of that message. That doesn't make a bit of sense to me. But we just saw the registry, didn't we? So, CLS ID, COM server. So this CLS ID will be listed in the registry somewhere. So if we wanted to, we could go figure that out. App ID is also something in the registry. It's like a little identifier for this program. Not going to spend too much time here. I just wanted you to know that it exists. Security, whenever somebody signs in or signs out. Here's a list of them. So if you're suspicious that perhaps there is an error going on, and later on when you develop your own web apps and it runs under Internet Information Server, and you've got an error going on and you don't capture that error, it'll be thrown to the operating system, and the operating system will log it under ASP.NET error. And you'll see your own errors in the error log, in the application event log, if you don't catch them. So it's important to know that that stuff does exist. Most of the time you don't need to go there, but if perchance you've installed a piece of software and you want to know, and it's kind of failing, and you want to know if it logged anything, it's a good chance you'll be in the event viewer. Task Manager. So once again, let's show you just another way to do this. I opened a command window, and I typed the name of the program, and I pressed Enter. It's the same thing as double-clicking on it. How did it know where task MGR was? Kelly?
It's in the path.
It's in the path statement. So I just typed in task MGR. Windows said, okay, I'm going to go through every path, every absolute path in your path statement, and I'm going to find something named that, and I'm going to run it. And that's all it did for me. There's no magic here. So this is Task Manager. This is the same thing you get if you right-click on your taskbar. If I had a normal resolution, I'd actually have some blank space there, and I could right-click Task Manager. That's another way to get to it, right there. You can also do, I believe, yep, that's snipping tool. Yeah. There is another shortcut, but it escapes me at the moment. But let's go back to Task Manager. Task Manager is important because it shows you how your computer is running right now. This is current information. You can sort, like if you have a really slow computer and it's like, what's going on? Do I have a virus? Do I have something going awry? You can sort by consumption, largest to smallest, or smallest to largest by clicking and toggling the header here. And it looks like OBS 64, the thing we're using to stream, is consuming 26% of my CPU. If you want to see it visually, you can click over here and click on CPU. It's like, okay, that's how my CPU is doing out of 100%. Likewise, you can click on memory. It's like, okay, that's how much memory I'm using of my 16 gigabytes. You can sort by memory as well. And up here, it's very helpful. It says you're using about 29% of your total computer's memory. There was a bug when I first installed Windows 10 3 years ago or so, and it had to do with Windows notifications getting stuck and continually trying to display themselves, and it evidenced itself as 99% disk usage. And it's like, what in the world is going on? My computer is so slow, and I just installed a brand new fresh copy of Windows 10. I went in here, I saw that disk was like 99%. I Googled it, and they say, oh yeah, it's a Windows bug. Go here, here, and here, change this Windows setting, and sure enough, disk usage went down to like 2%, and my computer is fast again. Now, how would I know to even go look for that? You have to know that Task Manager exists. And you have to wonder, my computer is slow. What does that mean? Am I running out of CPU, memory, or is my disk having problems? Here is where you can tell what's going on. So another thing that is useful, if somebody is actually remoted into your computer, and hopefully you only have one entry here right now, they would be listed here. So they have a remote session and they're actually doing something in your computer. If you didn't want them to, you can right-click and disconnect, whatever you want. But you'll see with the resources by currently logged in user. So Task Manager is all about what is going on right now with my computer. Usually I don't go in here unless there is a problem. If there's, something has gone off the rails and I need to go see what's going on. Oftentimes you go in here and you need to kill something. So you click on Processes, and we're not going to kill that one because then our streaming feed would die. But say Skype. I didn't launch Skype, but Skype likes to run always because Microsoft wants it to run always. I don't necessarily care for that to happen. Or Cortana. Cortana's a funny one. I bet you it'll stop me. It's like, no, I'm not going to let you kill me. Oh, I was wrong. It used to be where some of the things that Microsoft really wanted to run, they won't even let you kill it. You'd have to find special group policies to prevent it from even running. In some of them, they'll let you kill them, but they'll come right back. Yep. Kill me all you want. I'm just going to come right back. You're going to learn how to do that too, and that's what's over here, services. This is one way to get to it, but let me show you another way. Windows are services.msc. This is a list of what's called Windows services. Windows services are programs that are installed on your computer that are configured so that it can run automatically without you launching them. This is useful if, for instance, you want, and nobody has to be logged on. So if you turn on your computer and it's running, Windows Service can run with nobody logged in, and it's actually doing things. So it's like running with no user interface. That is useful in case of, say you want to write a server-based application that responds to email messages. Email doesn't really have to have somebody logged in. You've got an inbox, it can check the inbox, it can do things and send out emails in response. Perfect case for a Windows service. So what are these things? Windows services have 4 different methods, 4 different functions. Let's right-click on any of them, and right there they are. Start, stop, pause, and resume. Start launches it, stop kills it, pause says, I don't want you to die, I just want you to go to sleep for a minute. Stop doing whatever you're doing. Resume undoes that. It's like, go ahead and do whatever you're doing. There are several startup types. So once again, the reason you usually create a Windows service is that you want it to run without having the user touch it or run it. If you were writing a virus, wouldn't it be great if all they clicked on was that VBS file that one time, and then you fold them and you sent them something that they were tempted enough to double-click on, and it actually installed a Windows service. So even if they weren't logged in, your code was running and doing whatever you wanted to do under whatever security context you want. Now, I'm telling you about the nefarious ways that Windows services could be used, and those are few and far between. For positive purposes, you use Windows services so that it runs without having the user remember to log on. Some of the things that you'll find in here. Let's take a look. Oftentimes, these are things that are utilities. There's one. Google Update Service. So when I install Chrome, without even asking me, they say, well, you know, we want to keep you up to date. And part of the contract for you using Google Chrome is that we're going to make sure that we can update our own software and not give you a virus inadvertently because we've been hacked by pushing an update to our code. So they installed a Windows service on my computer, and they automatically can replace an executable with one of their own. So when you're running as an executable, that's great. You know, Google Chrome is one of their executables. But if you wanted to replace that executable, it's kind of a conundrum. How do you replace yourself? You have to stop to be able to be replaced. So they have a Windows service that does it. It kills Google Chrome, downloads the latest version, overwrites it, starts it. So as far as you, the user, is concerned, it's, you know, I just updated Google Chrome. It updated automatically. It's not magic. It's just a Windows service. And they needed that as a third party to be able to control something else. Now, notice some of these are running. Some of them are not. Let me talk a little bit about these startup types, and you can double-click on one. It'll show you all the details. And that is one. Okay. Automatic means whenever my computer turns on, automatically start me. It's like starting up the operating system. Automatic delayed start. Same thing, just wait a few seconds, let everything else finish, and then I'm going to run after everything else is finished. You might want to do that if you have to have networking capability. So networking is one of those things that starts up when you turn your computer on. Maybe if you're going to talk over the internet, you want to have that done before you start talking because there's no wire to talk across yet. Manual. That means you're installed, you can run, but somebody has to run me. You have to have a trigger. Disabled means you can't even be run. So it's like, if you want to make sure that it can't run without being re-enabled, say something's been uninstalled, you want to see if that's the problem, you can disable it. That's a rarely used one. Also, I told you that this is not run as interactive. You can specify, that's why there's a logon tab. It says, who do you want to run as? Local system account is the most dangerous, but also the most common. That means run as the local system, don't ever ask any questions, just do what I tell you to do. This account will limit the permissions, which is usually what you want, but it takes more effort because you have to find a valid user account on the target PC, so which is why it's not very common. Services.msc, and I have been negligent in looking into the questions. That doesn't mean I'm not going to answer them, it just means that I'll get to them later. Performance monitor. We are going to make lunch, I promise. Perfmon. Performance monitor is kind of like task manager, except that you can capture anything that's going on in your computer at the very minute detail. So how did I get here? You can go to a terminal, or you can go to Start, and you can type in Performance Monitor. There's one way to get to it. Click that. Or from a terminal, Perfmon is the name of the program. And once you do, you'll get here. Okay, so the default view just says, what is my CPU processor doing? And this is the percentage out of 100 that it's using right now. Now, that's all well and good, but that's of limited usefulness. So, things inside of Performance Monitor are called counters. These are metrics that you want to look at. At any given time, you can look at the infinitesimal detail of what Windows is doing at any given context. This is actually one of the powers of Windows. So let's go look at memory. So that's one of the things in Task Manager. But let's look at, and there's so many things in here. A lot of times you'll have like SQL Server installed, and you'll have SQL Server specific counters. So let's go under memory. Now, each one of these is an individual counter. So if I want to say, I just want to know how much am I using? Well, do you want that in megabytes or kilobytes? So let's say available megabytes, because I've got 16 gig. Click on Add. So whatever you want to count to show up in your chart, essentially, you push over with the Add button to the right. And each of these top level are just categories. So you can imagine the thousands of things in here. Packet, page file. Okay. So percent usage. And you could even have, okay, how specific do you want to get? So you have a category, you have a counter type, and then you could say 1 of 3 in this case. Paging file is, this is probably more than you care to know, but that's probably true of half what I've talked about this morning. Page file is this. When you run out of memory, say you have, I've got 16 gig. What happens if I run out of memory? If I try to use 20 gig? What happens in Windows, and actually on Linux as well if you configure it to do so, is it will continue to give you 20 gig of memory. But how is that possible if you only have 16? What it does is it will write some of that memory to a file on disk, and it will page it out. So it will take, okay, that's memory that it really needs to be in memory because they're going to use it, but I don't have enough. So what do? I'm going to put some of that into a big file on disk, and I'm going to use my 16. Why is that a bad thing? Because to do that magic, to make it work, it has to do what's called paging. It's got to replace what you need in memory dynamically. When you ask for this variable in memory, or you click on that program, it's got to say, oh, that's one of the things I stored on disk because I was kind of faking that I had enough memory. it's got to pull it from disk, put it in memory. So this is another reason your computer might get slow, or more importantly, your server. If you're paging, it will work, but your CPU is going to go up because it's got to actually do the processing of what do I need to pull from the page file. It's got to write the file. And it's going to be slower because it can't actually give you the memory because it doesn't exist. It's got to read it from disk and put it in memory again. Why am I telling you this? Because it's one of the counters. So let's throw that over here. Click on OK. Now, it looks like nothing has changed, but it actually got 3 different bars here. The problem with counters sometimes is the scale. Notice that if I click on it, you see last, average, minimum, maximum duration. So if I change it, you can change it by up or down arrows. This is in 11,492.000. So I really, in order to show that on the same chart, I have to get it in between 0 and 100. So you can double click on it, and let's see. Actually, scale. Okay. So scale it, now I can look at it as it's between 0 and 100. Now if you want to see which one am I actually on, what's my current highlighted one, click on that little highlighter icon and it'll become dark black. And you can switch between them. So my page file usage is negligible. It's touching it to be sure it's alive, but we know that because the task manager will tell me that I'm using like 4 gigs of my 16 gigs. There's no reason to page, which is what you want. Okay. One thing before we leave here, why is this here? Why can't you just do this with Task Manager? You can save this as a trace. You can define the counters that are of interest, and if you're running a very heavy server-based load and you want to capture it, and you want to see what is my performance profile over the next 2 days, save it, set it to run, and it will actually record it to a file. And you can go back and look at it and look at that results on another computer. So it allows you to run and capture a trace. That's what you need to remember about perfmon. Okay, we talked about a lot of this stuff, so we are going to make it for lunch on time. Task Scheduler. I should actually show you the user way of getting here. It's not like any of these are hidden. It just, I never get there the user way. So, what is it? Settings. Yeah, this is like 3 menus deep, and you'll get here too. So, System and Task. So I don't even know where it is.
Push start, and I searched.
Yeah, you can search for it, but there's a menu. It just, Microsoft, with every version of the operating system, about 3 versions of Windows, I stopped looking in their menus. It's like, okay, what's the name of the program? Because they like to move it around as a feature every time. So, Task Scheduler. You can type in task. I guess this is really what they want you to do. Start typing in task, and then click it. Okay. I told you about Windows services. Those are things that run without any user interaction. They run all the time, essentially. It's up to them when they want to do something. Task Scheduler is similar, except Task Scheduler have triggers. So if you want to do something without a user having to remember to do it, you can create a program, add a task, and let's take a look at some of these. I'm sure you have some in there too. Here's Adobe Acrobat Update Task. Let's see what Adobe installed automatically without asking me as a scheduled task. You just double click. It says OK. Scheduled tasks have a lot of options. That's because there are multiple different ways and contexts that they can be run. So if we look at triggers, triggers are when does it run? So it runs, and they're multiple. So we have at logon, and not only at logon, but it'll also run daily at 10 a.m. Thanks, Adobe. So if I do edit, and it says OK, daily, you can actually have it repeat every hour, every 5 minutes. You can have it expire. Looks like it's going to expire in 2027, so it's going to run forever. These are the things that software vendors are doing to your computer without you knowing all the time. And these are things that you could do to other people's computers without them knowing all the time. Now, at those points in time, what happens? Well, most of the time, there's just one action here. It's start a program. What is it going to run? Well, what's this nasty thing? We learned about paths, didn't we? This is an absolute or a relative path? Absolute. It starts at the C drive. So it says all the way down, and I'm going to run that guy. So it runs it with no parameters. So inside of there, they've got some logic that says, okay, it's going to wake up, it's going to do whatever it's going to do, and it's going to go to sleep. There are some conditions like, okay, maybe you don't want to use more CPU and burn the battery more if you're not on AC power. Here are some little tick boxes that you can change. If it gets hung up and it should automatically die, you can say, well, stop it if it runs, and thanks for taking the defaults Adobe and leave it for 3 days. So if it gets hung up, somebody wrote some bad code, it would just be running in the background for 3 days until I rebooted my computer. So look at how many are on here. And I pride myself in actually having a pretty clean computer. All kinds of stuff. There's Google Updater. I guess if their Windows service didn't work, they want to make sure that they had a task that would do it as a backup. Would it hurt to kill any of these? No, probably not. Some of them it would, though. So don't stop anything unless you know what you're doing, unless you know what it's doing. Let's see, GP edits. If you've been in a corporation and the corporate overlords want to lock you down, this is often the tool they will use. This will define, whenever you log in, it will run some special code, special scripts that can run special scripts that can set up drive shortcuts. It can prevent you from having things in the start menu. It can do all kinds of things. Let's take a look at, now, just at random. These are predefined little packaged features that you can turn on or off. These usually verbed in the negative. So it's like, do not allow sound recorder, or timeout for hung logon sessions during shutdown. By default, they all come not configured. If you want to turn one on, edit and click enabled. So a system administrator, what they do a lot of times is they decide, how hard do I want to lock my users down? How much do I trust them? And they will go down through here and they will choose the settings, usually. It's like, nope, don't let them do that. And they save that, and then they apply that group policy, which is what we're here, GP edit, because group policy editor, to your computer and require that it run as soon as you log in. So before you even see it, you have all these things applied. Now, since this is your computer, you can do whatever you like. You can also, with code, modify whatever you want. It's important that you know that it exists, but not necessarily that you use it every day. We've already seen the registry editor. You know what the keys are. We've talked about environment variables and path. Drag and drop tricks. I've just got one. I've opened a command window, and if you want to get the full path without typing it, you can open a command window and drag and drop, and it will give you the full path to whatever you dragged and dropped. So if you're not high on typing, there's one way around it. This also works with the run dialog. So Windows R, let's do the same thing. There you go. Snipping tool, that's this little thing here. This will allow you, in case you get stuck or in case you need to show somebody a piece of your screen, this will allow you to take a screenshot of just what you select. You have an image. And I can copy and paste it, or save it as a picture file. So that's useful, especially if you're ever making documentation. Or if you get stuck and you need some help on Stack Overflow on the internet, it's like nothing says it like a picture. So take a picture of what's going on, post it out there, you get some help. Paint, most of you have probably used Paint. The reason I even tell you about Paint is oftentimes I use snipping with Paint together. So if I want to do this and copy it, throw it into Paint, and now Paint will allow me to edit this, and I can touch it up before I choose to do something like put it into a document or write documentation for yourselves. And after you have that, it's just an image. Copy and paste it, you've got it. Hopefully you all have seen how to install programs on your computer. If not, add remove programs. This is where Windows keeps track of all the things installed on your computer and allows you to uninstall them. So once again, once you see behind the curtain, you see a lot of what these software vendors are actually doing to your computer. I didn't ask for Apple to install a Bonjour service. That's their service that allows them to keep their Apple products up to date automatically. They installed it. And, you know, it's probably something I would have said yes to, but they don't even bother with users or asking them because most people are just going to get confused. So if I wanted to uninstall it, I could. Just click the uninstall. When you install things like SQL Server, it'll install like 5 or 6 of these things. So, keyboard shortcuts, I've already shared that, and we're 3 minutes late for lunch, so I know you're probably getting hungry. One parting question. If I were to tell you that SQL Server that you installed as part of the preparation for this class runs as a Windows service, how do you get there? How do you go look at it? How do you stop it?
Stop it. How do you stop it?
We can try. Let's Task Manager. Let's go do that. Right click, Task Manager. Where do I find it?
Process.
Okay. So it's probably going to be something like SQL Server, right?
Mm-hmm.
Got a bunch of things running, but let's see. Sometimes they stash it under Microsoft.
SQL Server window. Okay.
SQL Server. They got a bunch of stuff, but these are not really it.
Oh.
Let's.
Services?
Yeah. Click on Services
Okay.
and sort by name. Yeah. And yes. So I have more than one instance of SQL Server installed. Notice the little $sign? So it's running. If you knew that it was running, you could actually sort by status and then search for the things that are running. You can stop it like that. There's also another way. Once we learn about SQL Server and how through the user interface, there are 2 or 3 other ways. But this is at the Windows level. It runs as a Windows service. You know you can go to Services. You can get to Services through Task Manager or services.msc, which is its own little program. And its prefix is MS for Microsoft, MS SQL. This is actually listed by name, so it's probably SQL Server. So SQL Server 2008 and S 2017. This is why I actually suggested when you install SQL Server to name the instance after the version. Because I have multiple instances, I wouldn't know which version unless it was named appropriately. So notice I've set this to manual, which means it's not running, and I would have to start it manually. I'd have to run it. 2017 is automatic, and it's running. Stop it like that. Say yes. With that, Harper's going to come back after lunch, and he's going to take you through the internet architecture, and he's going to make sure you have a GitHub account set up. And I'm going to go through and make sure that I answer any questions in the Slack channel. You tell them about where lunch opportunities are?
Yes, if anybody wasn't here, the closest one is right across the street. You can see from here, it's Brioche Dory in the biotech place. You can walk